technically speaking, the last time we got a brand new mainline entry in the Metroid Prime series was 2007 with Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, the supposed end of the trilogy. However, at the very end of the game, there is this final sequence that shows Samus flying off into the distance, and yet there is someone else following her. Sylux in the Delano 7. What comes of that situation? We're not entirely sure. However, in the spin-off Metroid Prime Federation Force, we did see Sylux stealing another Metroid egg, potentially opening up the possibility of a new series of Metroid Prime games where there could be a new Prime Metroid. This has been the speculation that us Metroid Prime fans have been living off of for years until they confirmed that Metroid Prime 4 was in development back in 2017. Unfortunately, they had to restart development and they announced this at the beginning of 2019. But now, in 2023, fresh off of the release of Metroid Prime Remastered, I think it's now time to start talking about, with some level of legitimate reason, for Metroid Prime 4 to be coming soon. What are the reasons that make me think this? And what do I define as soon? That's what we're talking about today.
Hey, listen!
Welcome everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time we're talking about Metroid Prime 4 coming soon. And there are actually several reasons why I think it's actually around the corner. But before we get into those reasons, let me point out that we recently hit 16,000 subscribers. Last week we started at around 15, and that's when I announced the goal to hit 25,000 by the time Tears of the Kingdom comes out on May 12th. We are gaining some ground. We're not quite pacing there yet, but we're getting close. So if you enjoy my content, subscribe and hit that notification bell because we might just make it. Alright, so my reasoning for Prime 4 coming soon is multifaceted, but let's talk about this most recent news that people have been bringing up. And that has to do with this survey from Nintendo of UK. And basically they were asking people why they bought Metroid Prime Remastered. And one of the options as an answer was, it seems like a good way to pass the time until Metroid Prime 4 releases. This is interesting, because it shows an acknowledgement of Metroid Prime 4. Nintendo has been extremely quiet about Metroid Prime 4. Even when they announced Metroid Prime Remastered, they made zero mention of it. So the simple acknowledgement of its existence is nice, but I also feel that it comes with a subtle implication that if a fan is buying Metroid Prime Remastered, to pass the time until Prime 4 releases, it does suggest that Prime 4 is going to come out for the same platform, and perhaps even in a reasonable amount of time. Now obviously that's interpreting a lot from minimal information that doesn't really make that totally clear, and it's also possible that the marketing team at Nintendo of UK doesn't really have much understanding on when Metroid Prime 4 is coming. And I'm not certain on this, but I do think it's worth considering that the marketing team may have been given the green light to make mention of Prime 4. And if they were given the green light to make mention of Prime 4, that does suggest that it's coming sooner as opposed to later. But ultimately, this is just a little potential hint. What I think is the bigger hint is that Metroid Prime Remastered has come out. But the way in which it came out is what I think is most telling. This game was rumored for a long time. We even saw evidence that this game was completed as of summer of 2021. And what's interesting, even though there were different insiders suggesting it was going to be coming out really soon, even Jeff Grubb, a pretty reputable journalist, saying that he was committed to it coming out on the holiday and then ended up being wrong, only for it to come out just a couple months into the next year. What that tells us is that they could have come out with a game for a long time. It's been ready, and they may have been moving it around behind the scenes because plans changed. But what changed exactly? My perspective was that the reason why Prime Remastered did not come out for the holiday was because Nintendo didn't think it was the right time to come out with it, because they wanted Prime Remastered to come out relatively close to the release for Prime 4. The idea is to use Prime Remastered to reintroduce the Metroid Prime series to the world, bring back old fans, get some new fans, and prime people, pun intended, for Prime 4. Suggesting that the marketing cycle for Prime 4 will start to kick into gear soon, and some industry insiders have been suggesting that Prime 4 could be coming really soon. Some even suggesting it could come out as soon as this year, which I personally have not been predicting, but with some of the recent events that have been occurring, I'm warming up to the idea. So for example, Nate the Hate has talked about Prime 4 potentially coming out this holiday or early next year to close out the fiscal year, meaning by March of 2024, so within a year from now, which I would qualify as pretty soon. But even Andy Robinson has actually taken back some of his words about the second half of this year being kind of empty. There was this discussion earlier in this year that Nintendo was going to have a weak lineup after Tears of the Kingdom. Well now, yes, we don't know about much beyond Pikmin 4 after July, so almost the entire second half of the year is unannounced for Nintendo, but Andy Robinson has suggested that it may simply be that these games are coming out a little bit later into the year, but still this year. So what this might mean is that after Tears of the Kingdom, there might be a little bit of a dry spell, but ultimately Nintendo may be still closing really strong. So there's two different considerations I have here with this. One, okay, that may simply just mean that there was some confusion or misinterpretation as to what was actually going down with Nintendo. But there will still be some quality games coming out this year, regardless of what their plans are for next year. Nintendo's going to maintain their consistent lineup of quality releases throughout the year. So while Tears of the Kingdom may be the big deal in May, they're still going to have a big deal game in the holiday, maybe a couple. And also considering that there is no mainline release Pokemon game for this year, just DLC, there's even more reason for Nintendo to provide other games to support the holiday lineup. As of the last couple years, they've been okay with Pokemon being the big release and just putting out some smaller titles surrounding it. This year, there's more reason to have a bigger lineup because Pokemon is taking a back seat this year, finally. And one of those big games could be Metroid Prime 4. But going back to Pokemon for a moment here, this also kind of takes me into my second consideration, based off what Andy Robinson said of this second half of the year potentially still being pretty good. There is speculation that there could be a Nintendo Switch 2 as soon as this year. And a lot of people have been interpreting this recent leak in a lot of different ways. But if you haven't heard it, I'll bring it up real quickly here. There was a leak that told us about the DLC in the Pokemon Presents that was very much right. And some of the information has been corroborated by others since that leak came out. And the leak talked about how with the second wave of the DLC, which is coming out winter of 2023, which is starting at the end of this year, leading into the early parts of next year, there would be a graphical update coming out alongside of this DLC for a next-gen Nintendo Switch system, implying that by winter of this year, there will be a Switch 2 out in the market. So what that means is sometime between now and the end of winter, or let's say early next year, let's say March or April, there will be a new Nintendo system coming out. And that includes the holiday. So this speculation that maybe Metroid Prime 4 could come out by the end of the year, I don't think is actually that much of a stretch, because if this Nintendo Switch 2 system is coming out as soon as this year, they're going to want to have some big hitters in the launch window, and Metroid Prime 4 is likely going to be an incredible showcase for that system. I still think it's coming for Switch, and based on how amazing Prime Remastered is, I absolutely believe it's still going to be impressive, but there's going to be an even better version for Switch 2 that will absolutely showcase the abilities of the system. Now, I personally don't think Prime 4 is going to be a launch title because the Prime series doesn't have the best sales history. It's not the kind of game that would be the ultimate launch title. I think the ultimate launch title would be something like a 3D Mario or a 3D Zelda. Usually that's when Nintendo has had their best successful launches, when it's been one or the other. When it's been something else, it's been kind of messy. And given that Tears of the Kingdom is coming out really soon, and that the Mario movie is this year, things could be lining up for a major Mario release this holiday. That said, that doesn't mean there's only going to be one major game coming out on the holiday. Prime 4 could still be in that launch window. What if this next Switch comes out September or October? Prime 4 could still be a November or December game, or somewhere in that window. Or even, if it's not this year, it still could come out sometime early next year. These are all options that I think are possibilities, and if this is the case that Prime 4 could be coming out in less than a year from now, we are very likely going to be getting a teaser for Prime 4 this year. Now, some people may still dispute the whole Switch 2 situation, but I will point out we have seen some evidence of the chipset, the Tegra 239, potentially being ready for production as early as last year, straight up a year ago. So there is even more reason to think that the Switch 2 thing may not be that far off. But regardless of Switch 2, I do think Prime 4 is close. I remember when Retro Studios updated their wallpaper to have this interesting banner. And now that we've seen all the promotional material for Metroid Prime Remastered, I think it's pretty clear that that banner has nothing to do with Metroid Prime, but rather it's about Metroid Prime 4. It's alluding to that, and it came alongside this promotional effort to bring in more talent to their studio they were hiring. But what's also interesting, we reported on this a little while back, we've seen evidence that Retro Studios is already hiring for a new AAA project, implying that their current AAA project is complete, and that would be Metroid Prime 4. And I think it's pretty reasonable. They announced the restart back in January 2019, so if we assume they started then, and not a little bit before then, which is also possible, then it's been at least 4 years, which is not a ridiculous amount of time. They may be very well close to wrapping up here, getting close to completion. And when you also consider that with Prime Remastered, we've seen that, yes, Retro Studios worked on this and they did an amazing job, but there were several different studios that also helped out. It seems like Retro Studios got things going, and then they gave up the project to other studios to finish it up. And this project, we've gotten evidence, as I mentioned earlier, it finished back in the summer of 2021, so they may have started it and pretty much moved on from it way long ago, maybe 2020 or 2019, and they've been entirely focused on Prime 4. They haven't allowed Prime Remaster to really get in the way of Prime 4, and now we're seeing evidence of them wrapping up and moving on to the next big project, all suggesting that Prime 4 is really close. So I'll say this, I think Metroid Prime 4, the latest we're going to see it release, is holiday 2024. And I could be wrong on that. In this video, we've brought up how Nintendo sometimes holds back games for indefinite amounts of time. But I think the reason they indefinitely were holding back Prime Remaster was because they were waiting for Prime 4 to get close to completion. And now it is. So I think that with Prime Remaster being fresh, that is evidence that Prime 4 is on the way. You see Nintendo of UK making mention of its survey, they may have been greenlit to be allowed to say that now. We see this evidence that Retro Studios is moving on to another AAA project. That's exciting, but it also means Prime 4 is wrapping up. And if this Switch 2 information is true and we could see a new system as early as this year, I have a strong feeling that with this reveal, they're going to have Prime 4 footage shown to just showcase how amazing it is. So even if Prime 4 is not coming out this year, which, you know, I'm not expecting that. I think there's still a great chance it could come out sometime next year, especially if we're going to get 2 and 3 before Prime 4 releases. They need somewhat of a window if that is their plan. But still, a teaser this year, I think is a pretty reasonable expectation. And I'm totally okay with Prime 4 being the big game to come out holiday 2024, maybe alongside some other major mainline Pokemon game, which might be a pretty nice 1-2 punch if you ask me. Maybe there'll be another Mario Party or Mario Kart something too. Like, they could still have a great second half of 2024, but regardless, I think Prime 4 is coming really soon. But what do you guys think? Do you believe Metroid Prime 4 is around the corner? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.